Hey there, and welcome back to the Eastern Bloc. And yes, I know, I'm going to try and keep things rather simple. I know nobody wants to sit through a 30-minute clip which only describes a boring old hatchback. And here it is, the Volkswagen Golf, found in its fifth iteration, probably the quintessential European compact hatchback. This family of cars has made history, and I think it's only fair to have an in-depth look at them and what they offer, how they feel, and whether you should or should not buy one. And more important than that is the engine. It's actually a 1.9 liter TDI, a diesel unit. Yeah, I know, everybody hates diesels nowadays. They pollute a lot, they don't offer any passion in terms of automotive soundtracks. They're not so desirable these days, but they're strong, powerful, economical, reliable, and they get you from point A to point B. I think we are overlooking some important factors here just to get on the bandwagon. You know the type of wave I'm talking about, the electric car experience and so on. But until we get there, if we ever get there, because I do have my doubts, I think it's important that we get the most out of these cars. There's a solid 3 to 5 years worth of decent motoring left out of cars like this. So without any further ado, let's get on to reviewing this car. And we continue along with the design. Look, I'm going to be level with you. I was never a huge fan of Volkswagens. I think they're a bit overpriced, and well, you sort of want an Audi or a BMW, maybe a premium car, but you don't really have the money to spend on it. So you get to Volkswagen because, well, they offer decent performance, decent economy. They have a sort of more upmarket interior compared to other offerings on the on the lower end of the market, but they still sort of feel a bit, they have a class of their own. But in terms of looks, well, I don't know, it's a mixed bag. I'm not so sure about the looks of this car. They're well studied, but they're not to my taste exactly. They're not dynamic, yet they're not very elegant. They're sort of in the middle. There are some touches which I do appreciate, like these A-pillars. I like the fact that, well, they don't cover the front wheels like in the Focus or the Peugeot 307. I don't really like that MPV look, so I appreciate the fact that Volkswagen has kept the volumes of this bodywork clearly defined. The A-pillars, they're sort of pulled back and inwards. They're very dynamic, and they complement the field of vision that you have from the driver's perspective very well. I don't know how to explain it any better, but to my mind, at least, this is the least intrusive piece of bodywork that's being put on a car. Well, in Volkswagen offerings anyway, they have that sort of sculpted and well-studied look. Don't like about this Golf iteration compared to previous ones. While I think the Golf 4 design was the most subdued, it was sort of put in tension by the wheels. They were at each corner. They were pulled back, sort of. The headlights were small, and they were sitting low in the bodywork. And also the height, at least from a window perspective, from a greenhouse perspective, they gave the car, the Golf 4, they gave a more dynamic, more desirable look. This one, well, it's a mixed bag. It sort of looks dynamic from some angles, but it's maybe it's a bit too high in the rear, and well, also these windows, while being practical, they don't really offer too much in terms of design excitement. The front end, well, it sort of looks okay. It's got that evolutionary Volkswagen style. I think this car was designed when Walter da Silva was, well, head of design, and well, it sort of defines the brand character well enough, even though this, I remember this being spoken in the car media at the time. The grille, the way the grille was designed, sometimes it sort of, well, it sort of competed with Audi's big grille designs, so they chose to tone it down a bit in later generations, and even in well, the Golf 7, the Golf 6, they went with the more horizontal design instead of putting a big strong grille in the front, big imposing grille in the front. In terms of mechanics, there's not much to be said about this car. Sure, it has decent suspension. It's four-corner independent, McPherson at the front, multi-link at the back. And as I've said, over the front wheels, because obviously this is a front-wheel drive European hatchback, over the front wheels sits that big old lump, that 1.9 liter TDI diesel unit, which actually has made history, at least in Europe. It's one of the most powerful, economical and reliable engines you could get in a diesel car, in a diesel passenger car in the late 1990s and early 2000s. Sure, it's loud, it's crude, it's unrefined, and you cannot really modify it to an extensive length in terms of gaining horsepower. I think you can modify it from the inside out, but that's very expensive, and it just makes sense to buy a different car altogether. If you try to remap it, however, I think you can safely get out about 20 to 30% more power from this type of engine, which is not much, but it's, well, it sort of works as a first step. But just for the fun of it, let's hear it run. The interior, so it's very well laid out before you. Everything is where it should be. I like the fact that there's physical buttons. I don't really like this capacitive or touchscreen display type of thing. I think they're silly, and I think you need physical input when you push something. But then that's just me. One thing to note about this interior, the roof liner has started to peel off quite badly, but then again, you would expect some sort of interior defects after more than 15 years of heavy usage, like this car has. I do appreciate the way the driver's seat adjusts. It lowers quite a lot, so I like that sort of low down stance in a car, so I do appreciate it. Also, even though these are not sports or bucket seats or Recaro specials, they do offer quite a lot of lateral support for the thighs and for the back, so I think that's a That's a big plus for this car. There is ample room for 2 adults here, maybe 2 adults and a child. So the plastics are of the same material. They're sort of, they feel scratchy because they're made of rugged materials, but there's also a feeling of quality here. Nothing creaks, nothing rattles, nothing is excessively pointy or sharp or scratchy. There's some inserts in the door cards, but there are no pockets for the rear passenger. And neither is there some sort of, rear armrest. There are, however, some vents here, so you can direct heat and air conditioning to your desired position, but you don't get to adjust the temperature, only the intensity. Nevertheless, a nice feature in a lower spec car. Trunk space is nothing special, but it does offer the norm for this category of vehicle. It offers 350 liters of boot capacity, and that's just about enough for the family groceries and typical shopping that you might do on a household. I wouldn't recommend this car for hauling or carrying. If you have bikes and the like, you should look for an estate version, though that to me is not so pleasing. So for city driving, I would say the hatchback is just enough, just right. Okay, so nice. Driving the 1.9 liter TDI Golf Mark 5. It's not a joyous or a special occasion in particular, it's just a Golf. Interestingly enough, the clutch engages way down low, so it's easy to, if you're not careful, it's easy to jolt it and to force it, like so. Okay, since this is a well-used car, well-worn car, it has 210,000 kilometers on the odometer. That's about 120,000 miles. In regards to this engine, well, it's quite a fun one actually. If you are in the right power band, you can feel the turbo wastegate free up there. Torque comes in at 1900 RPM. So when you are at 2000 RPM and you floor it, you get a surge of power, like so. And you would think that power will continue along the rev range, but it does not. And let me demonstrate that point. So actually I'm doing now around 90 kilometers to 100 kilometers per hour. I'm nearing 3000 RPM in 4th gear, and acceleration is starting to let go. But if you try and squint real hard and use your imagination, you could really fool yourself into thinking this is it offers more performance than it actually does. I don't know if that makes any sense to you, but that's the way I feel it. It tricks you into thinking this engine has a lot more power going for it. Road feel and manners, you can really feel the independent suspension working, although at the limit I feel this is more oriented towards comfort. It is rightly so. Don't get me wrong, I wouldn't expect from a diesel hatchback to offer you any sort of performance credentials, or I guess it would be ridiculous to call it sporty, but nonetheless, you shouldn't try to make too many edgy maneuvers in this car. It offers decent handling, and now there's the surge of torque I've been speaking about, but it doesn't go on too much. The brakes are nicely weighted, though the car does a bit of nose diving when you brake harder. It happens at low and higher speeds. The car leans forward when you brake suddenly or more vigorously. There's nothing to be concerned about. It's not displeasing. It's something rather quasi-annoying, I would call it. The steering, well, it's electric and it's adaptable. It's not bad once you get it up to speed, but dead center at low speeds, well, I don't like the feedback. And I don't like the feedback to any of Volkswagen's steering wheels. I've driven a couple of Passats that are way newer than this, from 2010 to 2017 or so. They don't really offer that nice responsiveness to the steering. Yeah, you feel that it could, it just doesn't. It's oriented towards comfort. Compared to the Focus, I don't think that this is a worse performing car, but I am of the opinion that it doesn't like swift maneuvers so much, but it's more oriented towards comfort rather than swift driving. Don't get me wrong though, it does offer decent handling, and at the limit you can really put your money on the Golf. It's just not happy to do it so often. Is it a fun to drive car? Golfs are Golfs. They have that particular character to them. The solidity, the feeling of robustness, combined with the well-executed design, well, they give you a special something. I know it's not quite so obvious as in other brands. They do give you the feeling that this is the standard, the norm for the class. If you want a hatchback, buy a Golf. Now, I don't particularly agree with this assessment, but there are other arguments involved in my point of view. Strictly speaking, if you want a good car, buy a Golf. It's the quintessential front-wheel drive hatchback, combined with this rather contrasting engine option, this crude 1.9 TDI unit. Well, it offers some interesting feel. Okay, so some conclusions for the Golf 5. It offers impressive refinement for its class, except for that 1.9 liter TDI engine. And if you squint really hard, like I'm doing right now because of the sunlight, well, you can fool yourself into thinking you're driving a muscle car, because torque is way down at 1900 RPM. And acceleration comes quickly, and you think to yourself, well, if I go this way, I would get a lot of performance. Yet, consider this is a stroke engine, so it's got a big stroke. It's not an over-square engine. It's not a high revving engine, so it doesn't offer power way up the power band. It just gives you that instant torque. It's like a tractor, like a lorry or of some sort. It's fun, it's unrefined, and it's wacky, I don't know, but it's not something that you would overly consider if you want to advance in this automotive landscape. So if you're looking for a nice example of this Golf 5, spend about 3,500 to 4,000 euros. Get a clean one. Don't look at the overly used, the taxis and whatnot. And you could get another 3 to 5 years worth of honest motoring out of it. Maybe have some fun with it. Just don't go nuts with modifying it. I guess those are my takes on the car. So I'll see you in the next one. Bye.